Bonjour, could I just do a sound check as well?
I now call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 41 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Fisheries and Oceans. This meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of June 23, 2022. Before we proceed, I would like to make a few comments for the benefit of witnesses and members. Please wait until I recognise you by name before speaking. For those participating by video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you are not speaking. Interpretation for those on Zoom, you have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either Floor, English or French. For those in the room, you can use the earpiece and select the desired channel. Please address all comments through the chair. Finally, a reminder that screenshots or taking photos of your screen is not permitted. The proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. In accordance with the committee's routine motion concerning connection tests for witnesses, I am informing the committee that all witnesses have been completed the required connection test in advance of the meeting. We're still trying to reach one witness that is not online, but the test will be done when he gets in touch or they join the meeting. Before we begin hearing from our witnesses today, I would simply like to get one item of committee business out of the way. Yesterday, members received 2 draft budgets for review, one for the study on the closure of mackerel fishing and the other for the study of the impacts of climate crisis. Does the committee agree to adopt both proposed budgets?
Agreed. We're going to take my lunch back.
You'll take more than that back. All right. Good? Good. Okay. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted on September 20th, 2022, the committee is resuming its study on the closure of mackerel fishing in Atlantic Canada and the Gulf of St. Lawrence. I would like to welcome our first panel of witnesses. Representing the Maritime Fishermen's Union, we have Louis Ferguson, Assistant Director, Omerus, and we have Martin Mallet, Executive Director. Representing the PEI Fishermen's Association, we are joined by Melanie Giffen, Marine Biologist and Industry Program Planner, and Nathan Chevery, Fisher and Co-Chair of the Mackerel Advisory Committee. The next one, Mr. Hubley, we're still missing. Thank you for taking the time to appear before the committee today. You will each have up to 5 minutes for an opening statement. I will invite the Maritime Fishermen's Union to begin, please. I don't know if you're sharing your statement or if one of you are doing it on your own. 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the committee for allowing us to present today. My name is Martin Mallet, and I'll be sharing my time today with Louis Ferguson, our Assistant Director of our R&D branch, Homaris Inc. I'll be speaking in French. La décision de fermeture complète de la pêche.
The decision to close the mackerel fishery completely has affected all of our fishing members, whether it be through access to the commercial or bait fishery. And once again, this decision came with very little notice, and when our members were already preparing for the upcoming season. At the time of the last mackerel stock assessment in 2020, according to DFO Science, a reduction in the quota of 4,000 tons for 2022, i.e. a decrease compared to the previous year of 50% instead of a complete moratorium, would have still offered a 79% probability of growth in the spawning biomass based on the average of the last 10 years. This cut would have been significant, but it would not have been a complete moratorium, and it would have taken into account the socioeconomic value of this resource for the Atlantic region. A complete closure of the mackerel fishery was thus an extreme, unjustified measure announced at the last minute with no respect for the fishermen who are already incurring expenses in order to be ready for the start of the 2022 season. The mackerel stock is shared with the U.S., and to this day, there is no co-management plan with the Americans. So they continue to fish the same mackerel stock while we have to sit back and watch them do it. Here, then, are some recommendations for this committee. 1. We believe that a co-management agreement with the U.S. should have been developed before calling for a complete closure of our Canadian component of this fishery. This is necessary for the sustainable management of the resource throughout its range. 2, the MFU has made several recommendations in the past to better protect the resource and optimize mackerel reproduction, but to no avail. In our opinion, and that of other inshore fishermen's associations, a large part of the problem associated with the gradual decline of the resource was the increase in fishing effort by seiners and not the inshore gillnet and handline fishery. This type of fishing gear does not select fish by size and therefore does not allow small fish to escape and continue to grow to the size for reproduction. If you want to keep the seine fishery, then fishing allocations will have to be adjusted to take into account the fact that this catch method is not selective. The reopening of this fishery will have to be done by prioritizing sustainable methods of catching fish. 3. Climate change brings us extremes and variations in climate every year. We observe these changes through the spatial and temporal variations in the species that are caught and to which our fishers must adapt to catch the fish. So we also need to adapt the work of stock assessment science to the timing of the species we want to study, not the timing of the bureaucrats. With climate change, the marine ecosystem is changing. It is imperative that this dynamic is taken into account in the scientific analysis and stock assessment of our species. 4. We also recommend an in-depth study of the predator-prey relationship between the various seal species and mackerel. For example, current studies on the stomach contents of seals are conducted during the winter when mackerel are no longer in the Gulf of St. Lawrence. Any additional information gathered would be useful and beneficial to a better understanding of mackerel population dynamics. 5. Any recovery plan must also incorporate the development of a sustainable seal hunt. The loss of the sealing culture and thus the lack of sealers in our communities is one of the main obstacles to addressing this challenge. At a minimum, there is a need to mitigate regulatory barriers, to support and promote the training of new commercial and recreational sealers and seal products in Canada. This is also an important area of opportunity for participation and partnerships with First Nations. 6. Fishers are facing dramatic increases in their operating costs due to the current inflationary phenomenon, but also due to the additional inflation created by the closure of the fishery for their traditional bait. For example, the price of mackerel purchased for bait from international markets has increased by 32%. We request that the handline bait fishery be reinstated by 2023. This would restore some of the fishery-dependent science that was lost this year due to the moratorium. And last point, 7, many fishers depend on the pelagic fishery for their livelihood and are severely affected by this moratorium. The implementation of a program similar to the Atlantic Lobster Sustainability Measures Program, which was very successful in the early 2010s, would help this fishery to restructure and rationalize, would allow to support science in a context of climate change and also to support the development of alternative solutions. I thank you for your attention, and we appreciate all questions that you will have for us. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We'll now go to the representative of PEI Fishermen's Association for a 5-minute statement or less, please.
Thank you very much. I will be giving the opening statement, and Nathan will be available for comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of this committee, for the invitation to speak to you today. The PEI Fishermen's Association was created in the 1950s to approach the federal government with one united voice. The PEIFA has evolved alongside the Department of Fisheries and Oceans to create the well-established working relationship we still maintain today. Our goal in being here today is to focus on mackerel science and therefore management measures as they relate to Prince Edward Island. The PEIFA would first like to thank the department and the minister for taking steps to try and rebuild the stock. Although we all have different opinions on the method, we all agree that we need to work together for a sustainable stock in the future. It has been made clear over the past few years that simply decreasing the TAC is not a solution for rebuilding the stock. It's time to start thinking outside the box for new management measures that allows a fishery while also increasing the biomass. Numerous recommendations have been submitted by multiple fishing organizations during the Atlantic Mackerel Advisory Committee meetings, but these recommendations consistently seem to fall on deaf ears. Originally, the PEIFA sent a formal letter containing our recommendations to the chair of the advisory committee, but soon changed this practice and sent them straight to the minister to ensure everything being recommended during AMAC actually reached the minister. There is no transparency back to the members of the AMAC table regarding what is shared with the minister. The following is a summary of some of the key recommendations the PEIFA has made at AMAC over the past 10 years. In 2012, the PEIFA recommended the establishment of a small fish protocol, an increase in minimum size, specifically noting that this was for protection of future generations, and a decrease in TAC. In 2014, a decrease in TAC, increase in minimum size, minimizing the seining fleet, a mackerel working group, additional research, and a hailing system were all recommended. In 2018, an increase in minimum size, an increase in dockside monitoring, increased enforcement, and increased mesh size were included in the recommendations. In 2019, all previous recommendations listed continued to be submitted, but a better understanding of the predator-prey relationship with seals was also added to the list of recommendations from the PEIFA at AMAC. As was stated by DFO at the 4RST Groundfish Advisory Committee meeting, a gray seal reduction greater than 65% is required to witness any rebuilding of the southern cod, hake, plaice, and other groundfish stocks in the Gulf of St. Lawrence. Based on a literature review done by the PEIFA, it appears there are numerous biases in the work being done on seal diet. Some studies are done during winter when mackerel have left the Gulf. Other studies are done when seals are not eating during haul-out periods. It is recommended that these biases be addressed in proper spatial and temporal studies, and these data be included in the mackerel stock assessment to better understand the predator-prey relationship between seals and mackerel. Then in 2020, again, all previous recommendations listed were submitted to the AMAC table, but a graph, which is included in the document, became available to the PEIFA by DFO that prompted the addition of a recommendation for a moratorium on the seining fleet until mackerel stocks recovered to the healthy zone. Based on evidence presented by DFO, and I quote, up to the early 2000s, gill nets, jiggers, and traps accounted for the majority of Canadian mackerel catches. The majority of catches from the mid-2000s on have been by small and large seiners, which were used primarily in Newfoundland. Between 2002 and 2007, small seine landings ranged from about 11,000 ton to 30,000 ton, and large seine landings from about 6,000 to 15,000 ton. In more recent years, small seiners have landed the majority of the catch in the commercial fishery, end quote. This paragraph clearly identifies the gear type capable of the highest catch rates and therefore the starting point for effective change in the fishery. And the graph clearly shows this if you take a look at the color version. It is important that members of this committee see that industry has been making recommendations annually for at least 10 years related to the protection of the stocks. Although the recommendations listed here are only from the PEIFA, other organizations also made recommendations during the same timeline. The last key issue we want to shed light on is how the American fishery affects the Canadian biomass. The northern contingent of Atlantic mackerel spawn in the Gulf, but then go to the U.S. over the winter, where there is no minimum size during the fishery. As long as there is a fishery happening in the U.S., decreasing the TAC in Canada does not aid in rebuilding the stock. To add insult to this scenario, fishers in Canada are then forced to purchase undersized mackerel from the U.S. to use as bait in their own fishery. The PEIFA are aware that this is a complex issue. We want to work with DFO to find a solution, but members of the mackerel industry are left asking, what do we have to do to reopen this fishery? Considering the recommendations being made are not being addressed. Members of the PEIFA would love to see either Minister or Deputy Minister of Fisheries attend the next AMAC meeting to hear the issues directly from the harvesters. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And I see Mr. Ubley has joined us from the Prospect Area Full-Time Fishermen's Association. For your opening statement, sir, 5 minutes or less.
Just here representing PAFA, Prospect Area Full-Time Fishermen Association. Just want to see what's going to be done here. I'm good. Talk to you later. Just listening.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll go right to our rounds of questioning, and I'll remind members to please identify who the question is to instead of just staring at the screen. We'll now go to Mr. Small for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the witnesses for taking time to be involved in our valuable study. A question for Mr. Mallet on co-management. I heard him messaging mention co-management with the United States. Could you give a brief outline in like 30 seconds or less what you mean by that?
Very briefly, and I think that Ms. Giffen also alluded to the same idea that I think there should have been some kind of a co-management structure with the U.S. So that if there are any measures taken in Canada, that some similar measures can be taken in the U.S. so that we can tackle the same issues at the same time. Like was mentioned by Ms. Giffen. I mean, if we support or invest in measures here protecting, for say, a small fish, and they are taken or fished out of the U.S., we're doing all of these sacrifices here in Canada for nothing. And who's paying for this at the end of the day is our inshore fishermen fleet. Nobody else, right?
Thank you. Ms. Giffen, Mr. Chair, my next question is for Ms. Giffen. Just received some information that the United States has increased their TAC by an extra 1,000 tons. What do you think of that, Ms. Giffen? Why do you think the United States would increase their mackerel quota mid-season? Do you think they found that there are more mackerel than they originally estimated?
Thank you for the question. I can honestly say I did not hear that they had increased their attack during the season, and I can't pretend to understand why they would. The scientists from the U.S. are involved in the Canadian stock assessments, as the Canadian scientists are involved in the American stock assessments, and both have seen an extreme decline in previous years. So I don't want to venture a guess as to why they would feel it was acceptable to increase their attack during the season. So
we again to you, Ms. Giffen, we've had numerous accounts of about how plentiful mackerel are, and that's coming from all over Atlantic Canada. I don't know if you've seen those accounts there in PEI, but I know PEI is some of the warmest waters in Atlantic Canada. That's for sure. So if there's a warming of the water and mackerel shift their migrations, would it be an area with a much warmer water that would be impacted the hardest by that, such as PEI?
It's a possibility, but I feel that if there's anecdotally, we hear there are increased numbers of small fish. The key here is in Canada, we can't fish those small fish. We protect them. So when they go to the U.S., if there is anecdotally more fish, and maybe that's what they're seeing as well, but in the U.S., there's no minimum size. So they can take those small fish before they ever have an opportunity to spawn.
Okay, before you go on, Mr. Small, I've got the clock stopped. The lights are blinking. There's a vote, I guess, taking place, or a notice of a vote that'll be taking place. I don't know if it's a 15-minute bell or a 30-minute bell. 30? Is the committee okay with continuing on as normal till we get to the actual vote and then take a few minutes and we'll all do it electronically instead of leaving the room? Okay. Yes, that's what it's there for. Hi, bye. All right, you can continue, Mr. Small, please.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Mallet, what have you heard coming out of areas in Atlantic Canada as to the plentifulness of mackerel this year? Have you heard any contradictory observations that there's a lot more mackerel than DFO is estimating?
I may share this answer with Mr. Ferguson here, but we've heard reports all across the spring and summer and especially fall, where I mean there seems to be shifts in the patterns in distribution. Small mackerel seen sometimes of years where we're not used to seeing them at that time, but also much larger mackerel schools coming in close to shore later in the summer and especially in late fall. I don't know if Louis, you want to add something there?
No, Mr. Mele did actually go across what fishermen seen as observation on the water. As far as for the other part of the question, where to compare with what DFO science is seeing, that it's hard to say because it's in the water. It would have to be a more of a broader scientific modeling to see that.
I would just add that without any fishing activity on the water, we've lost a significant amount of science capability just this year. So, I mean, what we're seeing are observations, but at the end of the day, it's not a science protocol. I mean, we would need to have people on the water full time to do an actual study of what we're seeing and what changes are going on in the ecosystem around climate change.
So Mr. Mallet, without that harvester logbook information, there's a big part of the science missing. But how much did DFO put into the information? How much of that logbook information actually went into stock assessment? Because if we correct me, but was it 2019 that we had the last egg survey in the Gulf? But since that, we've had lots of logbook data. So is DFO evaluating this properly?
Who wants to take that one?
I can take it. But yes, 2019 was the last season where they did the egg survey. In 2020, due to COVID, they were not able to go and get the surveys. As far as for the logbooks, I know some of them are completed, some of them are missing key part information where they cannot be inputted fully in the scientific assessment. But I do believe that the logbooks from the previous years were used, but to what extent, that I don't know.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Small. We'll now go to Mr. Morrissey for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Chair. First question is to Mr. Mallet. And you made reference to reopening will need to take into account the conservation risk. And you also, in answering a previous question, you reference shifts in patterns. As well, you reference fishers need to restructure and rationalize. Martin, could you expand briefly on what that would look like?
Well, I think I've used the comparison with the ALSN program, which was a success in our lobster industry a few years back. I think there is potential to maybe look into some parts of our fleet that may need some rationalization, so maybe less effort and leave more fish to the others that are remaining in the industry. In our case with the MFU, we have a small percentage of our fleet, of our membership, that is dependent on pelagics. So moving ahead, we're trying to focus on having our members be multi-species fishermen, so that they have a larger spectrum of licenses that they can survive on. The second thing is that, all in all, I think there's a need to look into, like it was mentioned earlier, at what brought us to where we are today. And there's been a reference made to the seiner fleets that have had a huge impact over the last 20 years on our stocks. And the fact that they are they have very little selectivity designed into the seine technology. It's a very harmful method of fishing. And if we are to keep them in our fishery as a whole, if we need to keep a place for them, then it needs to be taken into account that they fish very small fish that don't have any chance of survival and reproduction.
Question to Martin and Ms. Given. It would be fair to assess that the biomass has tumbled over the past decade. Would you agree with that, Martin?
Yes, there are
it's undisputed where we're at, but the biomass has tumbled.
Yes.
Yeah, Melanie, would you agree?
Yes.
So the biomass is tumbling. Everybody agrees on that. but the continued fishery could go. Ms. Giffen, could you comment on, because often we'll get the comment, and Martin alluded to it briefly, is that from fishers where sightings would be contrary to the state of the biomass, that there's ample fish out there. Could you briefly comment on both of you are a scientist. From a science perspective, how do you rationalize the difference between what fishers see, the biomass, and everybody agrees has tumbled, so the stock is not there, and the science that's saying if specific action is not taken, this is a fishery that could be close to wiped out?
So I think a key there is they do an egg survey. Science does an egg survey, so we have a better understanding of what's happening with the eggs. And then the next round of sampling they do is from the landings. So there's never any data collection or research done on pre-recruits. Those pre-recruits leave the Gulf and they head to the U.S. and there's no minimum size there. So we're definitely missing data from that perspective on those pre-recruits. And that's normally, anecdotally, I believe, what fishers are reporting that they're seeing when they see schools of fish in some cases. Again, that's anecdotal, and we do have a fisher here from PEI if you wanted to direct the question towards him for the actual sightings.
I'll get back to that in a moment, but I want you, in the time leaving, because a lot of the focus now will, in this study has been leading that direction, is how best do we recommend the reopening of a fishery, or what that fishery should look like? And if you could comment briefly, if the Americans do not reduce their effort, what does Canada do in that position? Do we simply ignore the health of the stock and take a risk, or do we continue attempting to rebuild a stock in Canada? Could you comment?
Yeah, so I remember
Melanie?
the second part of the question better. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. So basically, the way my understanding that the U.S. works is they set an overall TAC based on the stock assessment from Canada and the U.S. And once that overall TAC is set, then they subtract the Canadian TAC. So if there's 4,000 tons that Canada will fish, then that's 4,000 tons that the U.S. will not fish. So if we don't fish it, the U.S. will. From my perspective, unless both sides are doing something to protect the stock, there's no reason we can't open the fishery again in Canada for a small portion that will be taken out anyway by the U.S. if Canada's not fishing it.
Yeah, well, I think that's the first time that actually has been clarified of the interrelation between the U.S. and the Canadian fishery. I would like to go to the fisher in my time left, and just my time is just about gone. If you could comment on why fishers see a different perspective than the science is telling you.
I don't know if we see a different perspective than the science. We do see fish everywhere in the ocean. I know just being out tuna fishing this year, there's nowhere that I went that was there was no mackerel available. Size is definitely an issue sometimes. Usually it's very location dependent. If you go to the right structure, you're going to find the right fish. Is it commercially viable? I think on a large scale with seiners involved, no, I do not believe it is. But as far as a bait fishery, there's definitely room for a bait fishery there. You're always going to have somebody's going to see fish, and they're going to look at it different than the next person as it being viable and it not being viable. So mackerel in the Gulf waters, the southern Gulf waters in the summertime have been fished since before any of us were around. In 1967, I have a dime here, and it's got a mackerel on it from the Canadian Mint. So it's pretty important to our communities, and it's pretty important to the inshore fishing sector that this government promised to protect, and to have a closure when there could have been a reduction in the fishery is just hard to believe.
Thank you. We'll now go to Madame Debienne for 6 minutes or less, please.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses. I'm going to go ahead with Mr. Mallette. Mr. Mallette, the biomass is moving. This is what we hear, and what you're saying also is that you're observing fish where they were not before at some periods of the year. And so this year, because we did not have the appropriate measurements, so what will be the missing elements for decision making in the future? We're going to have some missing data. So what do you think is going to happen? Well, one of the advantages, the main advantages of having fishers on the water is that these are eyes on the water year round. When we need to know when the fish appears close to the shore, and another indicator of abundance of the fish, but it also gives us an idea of when the fish leaves our shores as well. So now we have no idea. We don't really know what's happening other than anecdotal reports from fishers on the water for other fisheries. For example, a tuna fisher, and he sees fish. We've seen the same thing during other fisheries in the fall, during the herring fishery, even during the lobster fishery. And so this is a source of information that we're missing. If we had at least kept the bait fishery for mackerel this year, it would have had a very small impact on the resource, but we would have had some people on the water, and it would have given us a platform to have boats on the water. So a lot of our capacity disappeared with this moratorium. So it's a major loss for decision making over the shorter term. Could you tell me, when we co-management with the U.S., was anything done by DFO in order to try to co-manage with the U.S.? Has anything been done? Well, that's a great question. And I would ask my colleagues to answer. What I know is that there might have been some meetings after the fact following the announcement of the moratorium in March. Following that, discussions were held with officials in Ottawa and their counterparts at NOAA in the U.S. But it's not after the closure that you do that. This type of collaboration has to be done together. We need to have an agreement on the capture methods and on conservation methods before making drastic decisions, such as was done in March of this year. Would other witnesses have any comments on this?
Monsieur Chevary?
Mr. Chevary, do you have any? Mrs. Griffin, do you have anything to say on this?
C'est un peu la même.
One thing I would like to state here, there's at the AMAC meetings, there's a large representation of the seiner fleet at the AMAC meetings, and many of the people representing the seiner fleet at the AMAC meetings are also wearing the hat of an international company that can import the bait or the fish from other places like Europe, which are having stellar years in their fishery. They actually quite possibly could have gained from this closure. These groups are the only groups that supported a closure unless they could have an extremely large fishery in Newfoundland with a tonnage double of what we had for themselves alone. So I have a feeling that there was consultation done. It just wasn't done in the right places. And the inshore fishery has not been protected. The hook and line fishery, it is impossible to clean out a species. With a gill net fishery, it is impossible to clean out a species. For the hook and line fishery, the fish has to bite the hook. With a gill net, it'll only catch a certain size fish. When you take a seine and you go around the school of fish, that school is now gone. There's no fish from that school left to replace itself. And that is what we're up against. and they use methods like midwater trawling in the wintertime off the US that basically has the same level of destruction towards the species. There's no respect for the species in these higher levels of catch rates.
Ce qu'on entend, ce que j'entends, c'est que les États-Unis sont bien.
So what I hear you say is that the U.S. is really pleased to find out that there's no fishery in Canada and in the Gulf because it opens up their market. Is this what I'm hearing? I'm trying to understand exactly what you're getting at.
Yes, this is what I'm hearing, and as well as the large companies, many based out of Newfoundland, and some of the larger companies in the Maritimes that are doing the importing of fish from the US or from Europe to replace our local supply, are now profiting off of our loss of our fishery.
Thank you, Madame Desbiens. We'll now go to Ms. Barron for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Chair. My first question is to Ms. Giffen. Ms. Giffen, you had spoken about in your testimony about the Prince Edward Island Fishermen's Association recommending a moratorium on the mackerel and herring seining fleet across the entire Atlantic region until the mackerel and herring stocks recover to the healthy zones. And please correct me if I got that incorrectly. You went on to say that from the mid-2000s, small and large seiners used primarily in Newfoundland have accounted for the majority of Atlantic mackerel catches. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on a moratorium on a particular type of fishing gear, if it would impact the recovery of the Atlantic mackerel stocks.
Yes, thank you for the question. The information that I passed along in my own remarks is an actual quote from DFO. So it's not research I did, it's DFO work. And I do believe in the immediate future, the moratorium on the seining fleet wouldn't make a whole lot of difference considering how low the TAC is. But as we start getting up a bit higher and we're trying to grow that stock back to a healthy zone, those fish need an opportunity to get to that healthy zone. And it's going to be much more difficult to complete or to achieve that when the seining fleet is out there, as Nathan referred to, kind of taking everything in a school of fish.
What are your thoughts on how small and large seiners compare to other methods such as gill nets, jiggers, traps when fishing the Atlantic mackerel?
We talk a lot about gear selectivity and the importance of gear selectivity, and the hook and line and the gill nets, as Nathan pointed out, are much more selective than a seiner. And also with a hook and line, you drop your hooks and you're in a school of small fish, then the fisher has the capability to move very easily without harming that school. But with a seine fishery, then the requirement is to actually encircle the fish and catch the fish and check them, and may cause harm in that case beforehand. But all of those fish are ultimately taken anyway. So I think there's a lot to be said about focusing on gear selectivity, talk about rebuilding the stock and aiming towards those gear types that do less harm.
So I guess just so I understand, do you think that would be a more effective method than a moratorium, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I think that kind of brings into play the moratorium. The moratorium on seiners to focus on the inshore fleets that have hook and line and gill nets and can cause less damage and allow the stock to rebuild while still allowing a small fishery.
This question is for Mr. Mallett. You'd spoken about the little notice that was received around the moratorium and around the mackerel. And I'm wondering if the closure of the commercial Atlantic mackerel fishery, we know it's had an impact on communities. And I'm wondering if you can speak if there was any compensation arrangements made for the commercial harvesters that were impacted by the closure, or any consultation that was conducted, if you can expand a little bit on that.
Good question. Absolutely no consultations in terms of what kind of aid program could be put in place. I mean, the Maritime Fishermen's Union, with our colleagues from the PIFA and other associations, we met with the minister's office, with the minister herself, and with the higher DFO officials as well to talk about, okay, so I mean, we were getting this closure at the last minute, and when I say last minute, I mean a few months before the start of the fishery. For us, it is last minute. Our fishermen start preparing their gear well in advance, sometimes over a year ahead. And they're also planning their business model in terms of having access to bait fishery for their bait access for lobster fishing, but also in the case of the fishermen that are more dependent on the pelagics. They have nowhere else to go. I mean, the herring stocks are going in a bad direction as well for the fall herring fishery. I mean, we're seeing the same issue with seiners there as well. So at the end of the day, not much consultation, no aid package, and this is why I've been talking about the ALSM program, which was put in place for lobster back in the early 2010s as a model that's been used and has had huge success as a way to maybe move forward.
Thank you. Just building off of the topic of bait, I know Ms. Giffen had talked about purchasing mackerel as bait from the U.S. and some of the implications around that. And I'm wondering if you can speak to the cost of, for harvesters between using local mackerel and imported mackerel as bait. And that would be to you, Mr. Mallet.
Oh, to myself?
Yes.
The cost is very significant when you buy mackerel from the international markets. I mentioned in my presentation that just over the last year, we've seen an increase in about 35% in the cost of bait in terms of mackerel. And I think, and this was with, I mean, having the freezers already full this year from mackerel from last year in the markets. So what is it going to be next year when our local mackerel stocks were not used to replenish these local freezers? I'm really fearful that the increase in price is going to be huge next year. So it is fundamental for us that we at least reopen the bait fishery moving forward for 2023, and look at, I mean, through an investment program in the whole sector, look at maybe other alternatives to supply our bait market. For instance, with some invasive species like Asian carp.
Thank you, Ms. Barron. I believe we'll go to Mr. Perkins now for 5 minutes or less, and then we'll proceed to a short recess to do a vote.
Great, thank you. And thank you, witnesses, for appearing. My question's for Mr. Hubley. Mr. Hubley, you represent the Prospect Area Full-Time Fishermen's Association. Can you just briefly describe the range of species that the fishermen in your association catch?
Hey, how you doing? We're everywhere from lobster, halibut, all groundfish, but the mackerels, a lot of mackerel run the bay this year. Everywhere you can see, right from mid-May till now, still mackerel here.
Understanding the bait fishery, but also the larger mackerel that generally come by in the spring in sort of 3 waves. That's the really important fast season that I believe some of your members, the lobster fishermen, actually stop lobster fishing and go out and catch that. Is that correct?
Yes. The lobster guys will quit a month before the season's over in the spring to go mackerel trap fishing.
And when they're so when they're out there, they're seeing it come by in like 2 or 3 week waves of these larger fish. About two or three of them. Is that true?
Yes, mid-May is for a couple of weeks is the largest fish. Then they just get progressively smaller for about 6 weeks. And then as the summer progresses, they get larger again, but they're not schooling then.
And in the last couple of years before the moratorium, when your members were out, what were they seeing in terms of their ability to catch their tack within the spring season?
The season before, as soon as the mackerel wiped, that's when the minister shut it down for a week, and there was mackerel that whole week, all large mackerel. It would have been a bumper season. Other than that week, really hurt.
And the year before that, when the minister, the day which I think was Minister Jordan, had interrupted the season, but the year before that, what was the season like?
It was a good one.
Yeah. So did you catch your tack?
Fisheries had the numbers. Yes, I believe so, yeah.
So in the absence of being able to catch them this year, your members have been out on the water fishing other species. They're getting, in LFA 33, they're getting ready for the lobster season. What are they seeing?
As far as mackerel?
Yes.
Well, just see them on the sounders. They've been here all summer. They're still here. You're not allowed to fish them, so we don't know. You can set some hooks down to get some for supper every night, no problem.
So you're actually seeing them on the sounders, on the acoustic sounders, because we've been told by some officials in DFO over other studies that you can't actually see mackerel on a sounder.
Late evenings, early mornings, if they're there, you'll see them.
With your members in the that are fishing lobsters are getting ready for the season, what are they doing for bait, since mackerel and herring are their primary species? I think herring has been cut as well.
I don't know about the herring being cut, but I bought some herring earlier this summer, bought mackerel from Ireland, where my last shot of mackerel came from.
I have a question for, I think it's Mr. Chevry. Mr. Chevry, can you describe, I think you also said that your fishermen are seeing mackerel on the waters?
Yes, we see them on the waters. It's hard to know the size because we're not fishing. But as far as being able to see mackerel on a sounder, that's how I made my living for the last 7 years. And quite frankly, mine will even tell you the length if you want to dial it in and turn that feature on. So I find that idea that they can't be seen on a sounder is just staggering.
Just because I'm running short on time, Ms. Giffen, quick question. In your opinion, what does the stock have to rebound to for it to allow the catch to begin again?
I would have to defer to the DFO standards that are set up for that. They have critical, cautious, and healthy zones, and I think that we would just go along with those zones. But ultimately, if the U.S. is fishing, then the mackerel are coming out of the water anyway. So as long as there's a fishery going on in the U.S., I see no reason why there can't be one in Canada as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Perkins. I'm going to ask our witnesses to be a little bit patient with us as we recess for a couple of minutes to do a vote in the House of Commons. Suspend it. We're back. We'll find out the vote later, what the tally is. There may be a recount if it's that close. We'll now proceed with Mr. Kellaway for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and hello to the witnesses. Many I've seen before, and grateful that you're here for this study today. I have a couple of questions. The first a couple will be for Ms. Giffen, and then we're going to transition, if I have time, to Martin Millett on a particular question I have for him. So, Ms. Giffen, I wonder if you could speak, and I think it's important briefly, to speak about the overall health of mackerel over the past couple of years. And the second question is, in testimony we've heard in our last meeting, cited clear evidence of the stock. We've talked about that today. And would you agree with this trend?
Thank you for the question. I have to agree. From a science perspective, all the science is pointing to obviously the decrease and the decline in the stock, and I don't think there's any disputing that. I think there's more data that we can collect to get a more fulsome picture and integrate that into the model. That would be, as I referred to earlier, the prerequisites that we're missing completely, and we do that in a number of other species, and so I think that it's clearly the trend has clearly been dipping downward over the past few years that I've been involved with the science of the stock.
Thank you for
that covers it.
No, I appreciate that. Question for you on the role mackerel plays in the overall food chain. If it were to disappear, what impact would that have on other stocks?
That is a loaded question. I mean, it is obviously small pelagics are definitely on the bottom end of that food chain. So everything larger than it is basically reliant upon it. So we could definitely anticipate some negative effects to our ecosystem, but I would not be able to pinpoint exactly what those would be. It would be too much of a guessing game, and I really don't have a crystal ball to predict that. Sorry.
Nor do I. My last question is for you, and then I'll transition to Martin. We've heard a lot about the age structure of mackerel, that the older they are, the better for the species and the long-term health. Can you explain why?
I don't know if I have enough time to explain it all, but right now we're really only seeing up to 5-year-olds, if that, and there's only very few of them in our population. And the requirement is that the larger, healthier fish are producing more large and healthier eggs. So we're missing those from the population as well. And as we've seen with other species, we try to pump more eggs into the system to increase stocks, and we just don't have the capability to do that with the mackerel stock because the age structure is geared towards the smaller, younger fish, and in some cases have not even had an opportunity to reproduce yet.
Thank you for those answers, Ms. Giffen. I appreciate it. I want to transition to Martin Mallet. Martin, I wonder if you can unpack, and I'm just looking at my notes here. You mentioned around a model, I hope I have this right, ALSM, the lobster model that you talked about. I wonder if you can unpack in greater detail that model and how it worked for the lobster industry.
Sure. I guess in a nutshell, there was like three prongs to it. One being that back in the day in the lobster industry in the Gulf, in the Southern Gulf, there was too many participants in the lobster fishery for the amount of lobster available. So there was a need to reduce the number of active participants. So, I mean, there was, I think, in our case, in New Brunswick, for instance, we had about 20% of our fishermen that were bought out and retired. Now, that had also a role to play in the effort on the actual lobster stock, which helped it repopulate. But also at the same time, it was part of the program which looked at what else can we do in terms of conservation measures to increase the amount of reproduction of lobsters, so increase the actual amount of adult lobsters then that can be available for the fishery. So, I mean, we looked at, for instance, the minimum size for lobster, which back in the day was around 72 millimeters, 68 millimeters actually before 2000. So, I mean, you only had about 15% of lobsters that could reproduce at least once before being fished. Now we're up to about 85%, which is a huge increase in reproduction. The last thing, there was some extra money put in to work on different types of research projects to try to get a better understanding of the lobster fishery, but also as a species, and also the interactions with other ecosystem participants, other species. So, I mean, all in all, I mean, it was a successful program as the data today shows. I mean, our lobster industry in the Southern Gulf is a success, and this has been the case for the past 5-6 years, and in large part because of this program.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kellaway. We'll now go to Madame Debienne for 2.5 minutes, please.
Mr. Mallet, I was listening to you speak about this program that worked really well for lobster. Would this type of program be similar for pelagic stocks? Well, probably, in the sense that there might be a way of rationalizing a part of the fishing effort in the fleet. In the part that should be simplified is the part for the seiners. And as Mrs. Giffen was mentioning a few moments ago, according to me, the size of the fish and the part of the stock that is very small, this is a direct indicator of the impact of the seine on the fish. So the smaller fish don't reach reproduction age. Secondly, I believe that it would be possible to invest through a program to increase science data, to increase knowledge or general knowledge on this species and its place in the ecosystem. and also to better understand the impact of the changes in the ecosystem on this resource, but also on other important resources. So your seventh recommendation was the implementation of a program similar to that of lobster. And so this involves investments. Of course, this investment was done by the lobster fishers themselves. They invested a lot because they are the first who want to save the resource. And how do you see the funding of this approach that you're suggesting that's similar to the ALSM? Well, in the beginning, the ALSM, the federal government invested 1/3 of the funding, and then the industry provided 1/3 or 2/3. And in some cases, there were loans coming from some provinces, the provinces involved, depending on the regions. I'm giving the example of New Brunswick. We withdrew about 160 fishing permits at the time. It cost about $20 million at the time.
Bien, we'll now go to Ms. Barron for 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you again to the witnesses. Mr. Mallet, I wanted to just continue on some of the points that you were making in my last line of questions around bait. I'm so curious to hear a little bit more around options that you feel might be an effective way to move forward. As I'm thinking about, for example, green crab or seal or artificial substitutes. Do you think these are appropriate alternatives to mackerel, and do you think this is a direction that should be looked at?
I think, if we can get back to a small scale bait fishery for mackerel or herring, is very limited, the amount of effort compared to some of the effort that's being put in place by the seiners. So some of that needs to come back online, but also by having more access to different alternatives. In some cases, it's processed fish. The offal from the redfish industry eventually, when it starts rolling, will be a significant source of bait for lobster, for instance. Now, there are other alternatives. You mentioned green crab. That's another invasive species. Some fishermen have had success using those a little bit. But also there's a huge problem in some areas across Canada and even in the US with some invasive species within the rivers and lake systems. And I mentioned the Asian carp as an example. Huge amount of that fish that's out there. But right now there's some, regulatory hurdles for us here in Canada with the CFIA being involved and making it difficult for us to try using it, at least as an experiment. And if it works, move ahead and use it full scale. It would, at the end of the day, reduce the problem that we have with inflation right now in our bait fishery, in our bait access.
Thank you, Ms. Barron. There's only 15 seconds left, so hardly time for a question or either part of an answer. We'll now go to Mr. Arnold for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses. I'd like to start out, with the two fishermen associations, or actually all three fishermen's associations. In the past year, Mr. Perkins and I have written to the Fisheries Minister asking for transition supports for Canadians whose jobs have been cancelled by decisions of the Department or the Minister of Fisheries. The Minister's response was that Government of Canada offers a suite of supports for workers and communities. I'm concerned that the Ministry may be directing fishermen out of their traditional lives and occupations. What do the harvesters you represent prefer? Would they want to work for the living or prefer to see government support programs? If we can start with Mr. Mele.
Fishermen prefer to work. Fishermen are fishermen. They fish. That's what they do. I think that in some cases, sometimes we need support programs though to get us through a rough patch. But I think in this case, we need a little bit of both. We need to let fishermen with low impact fishing practices go out there and continue fishing. We talked about getting that bait fishery back online, and I mean, at least if the Americans are, for instance, at 4,000 tons of quota, we should at least be at the same level. They wouldn't expect less from us on the North Atlantic right whale spout, right?
Thank you. Ms. Giffen, if we can, I'd like to hear from each of you.
I'd actually prefer to hand this to Mr. Shivery, if that's okay, as he's a fisherman from our association.
Mr. Hubley, is it Hubley or Hubley?
Melanie has seceded her time to me.
Yes. Would your harvesters prefer to be fishing or on government support?
Absolutely fishing every day of the week. It's been a major strain on myself and my family, my circle of peers, to not have a job to go to every day. That's how we spent our summers and our falls the last, since I bought in 7 seasons ago. And now I have nowhere to turn to. There's nothing else left in the industry for me to turn to, and it's very disheartening. My grandfather spent his summers mackerel fishing out of a dory, and I done a bit bigger version, but it's still nothing compared to what others are doing in the industry. And to have the loss of that, it's financially there's no way to describe it, and emotionally there's no way to describe it. So I'd prefer to be able to go fish even if it wasn't for enough of an amount to be commercially viable. Just to be able to get out on the water for my personal bait fish would be it would be good to see, and for everybody in the community as well.
Thank you. Interesting response from that most would rather be working. Ms. Giffen, how do they know what age structure the stock is when they only sample eggs and larvae for the stock assessments?
Thank you. They don't only sample eggs and larvae. That is one section of the stock assessment. The other section, major section, is they do take landings data. So I've done the sampling for them in the past. We'll do a sample of approximately 200 fish where we measure all 200 fish. And then from those 200, we do a subsample where we keep 2 fish from each half-centimeter size class. And those fish are actually shipped off to DFO. Where DFO can actually evaluate the age structure from that subsample of fish.
But if there's no catch, then there's no data for that portion of it. Is that correct?
100% correct.
Okay. And what percentage of Atlantic waters are surveyed or sampled for the stock assessments?
When there's a commercial fishery going on, there is a wide array within Area 4T, which is all of the Gulf, from numerous provinces, so they all pitch in. And I know that last year with no commercial fishery, I believe, and it might have been from the MFU, so they can correct me here, there were only a few samples submitted by the MFU to DFO. PEIFA did not partake in sampling last year because the cost was too high to send our fishers on the water for such a small amount of fish and no reward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold. You're almost dead on the time. Good for you. We'll now go to Mr. Morrissey to finish off with our first panel for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Chair. My question, actually, I'll go to both to Mr. Mallet and Ms. Giffen. Ms. Giffen, do you recommend to this committee that we would recommend a structured bait fishery opening for the 2023 season? You're a biologist, scientist, who I respect.
I would, yes.
Okay, good. Martin?
Same here.
Briefly, if you could, how, and maybe follow up with written to the committee, and how would you manage a bait fishery in 2023? Could you provide that recommendation to the committee on how, and if you could just comment briefly on what type of a fishery you would visualize? beginning with Melanie and then Martin?
Yes, thank you. I think there would be a number of management measures that could be considered, a lower TAC, an increased size, but ultimately I would feel more comfortable talking to the mackerel advisory here on PEI and submitting the comments in writing to your committee rather than making any commitment on my own right now.
Okay, thanks, Ms. Martin?
I'll just repeat what Melanie just mentioned there, but also maybe, a few other options would be to have a NELOG program or a paper log program with some dockside monitoring, since, it would be a very limited fishery and it would have to be monitored. Louis, do you want to add anything there?
Everything's been said.
As a fisher. Could you just comment what type of enforcement or regulations would you suggest from the fisher perspective that would be needed to have a limited bait fishery next year?
I would expect something along the lines of a weekly TAC per individual. There'd be no sale of the fish. It would be just personal use fish. And obviously it would all be 100% monitored, and maybe limitations on gear. Currently we're allowed on the commercial fishery, we're allowed to run 100 hooks when we had closure, and then bait fisheries open before, the number of hooks was usually less. And then there'd be a weekly allowance for what we'd be allowed to go for.
Okay, thanks.
Things like that.
Good. I appreciate your candidness. To both Martin and Melanie, you both referenced a recovery plan needs a seal hunt. I believe that was your comments, Martin. And then Melanie, you referenced gray seal reduction plan need to be put in place as part of this. Could you elaborate, and how do you view that in light of, how do you accomplish that without having the Americans focus on Canada? Martin?
I may start there and mention that there is a seal quota every year, gray seal quota and harp seal quota, but it's not being met because we don't have enough hunters out there. So we absolutely need to find ways to train new hunters, and also maybe subsidize the hunt in different ways so that it's feasible to go out there and actually hunt seals and make a little bit of profit off of it, while at the same time developing the personal use or recreational seal hunting culture across the Maritimes. I think that would be a good step forward.
Melanie, briefly, I got 80 seconds left.
Briefly, I can just say that I agree with Martin and his approach. I think the PEIFA feels the same way as the MFU does on this topic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morrissey. That concludes our first round of testimony and questioning for this particular meeting. I want to say thank you to the witnesses who've appeared, albeit virtually, but sharing their valuable information with committee on this very important study that we're in the middle of right now. So we'll recess or suspend for a moment while we change out panels and get ready for the last hour or 45 minutes. Order. I would like to welcome our witnesses from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. Of course, we have with us in person Mark LaCouf, Regional Director, Fisheries and Harbours Management, Gulf Region. We also have Mr. Todd Williams, Senior Director, Resource Management. And online we have Jean-Yves Saveret, Regional Director of Science, Quebec. And I apologise if I didn't pronounce the names anywhere close to right, but welcome. And we'll now start off with a 5-minute opening statement from the department officials.
Yes, you did get my name correct, so thank you. My name is Todd Williams. I'm also the Acting Director General of Fisheries and Resource Management at Fisheries and Oceans. I'm joined today by Mark LaCouf, Regional Director of Fisheries and Harbour Management, Gulf Region, and Jean-Yves Saveret, Regional Director of Science, Quebec Region. On March 30th of this year, the Minister communicated her decision to close commercial and bait fisheries for Atlantic mackerel. This decision was based on the most recent and best peer-reviewed scientific assessment of the stock. That assessment determined that Atlantic mackerel biomass is at a historic low. Further, the assessment indicated that overfishing has led to a collapse in the age structure, with relatively few productive fish remaining in the population. This was the continuation of a worrying trend that has persisted for a decade and confirmed that reductions in total allowable catch and improvements to monitoring and reporting, though significant, were not sufficient to rebuild Atlantic mackerel to sustainable levels. Pour prendre cette décision, l'importance économique et culturelle de la...
To make this decision, the economic and cultural importance of the mackerel fishery in the Atlantic and Eastern Canada had to be balanced with the future viability of the stock and the fishery. Of course, this was an incredibly difficult decision to make, given the direct and indirect impacts. It was also a decision based on science and taken in order to have a responsible management of the fishery.
Open, competitive commercial and bait fisheries. A number of methods are employed throughout Eastern Canada, from gill net and hand lines to trap nets and purse seines. In addition to the commercial and bait fisheries, catch also occurs recreationally, as bycatch in other fisheries, and in food, social, and ceremonial fisheries. In 2021, Canada's landed value of Atlantic mackerel was $8.6 million. 753 enterprises out of about 10,000 in Atlantic Canada and Quebec took part in the mackerel fishery. Of these 753 enterprises, it was estimated by the department that about 15% of total revenue was derived from mackerel fishing. In the 5 seasons from 2009 to 2013, Atlantic mackerel catches fell from approximately 42,000 metric tons to about 8,000. The total allowable catch at the beginning of this period was 75,000 tons and was reduced to 36,000 by 2013. The numbers clearly indicated difficulty in exploiting the resource. From 2014 to 2021, the total allowable catch was set between 10,000 and 4,000 tons. Dans l'Est du Canada, ce poisson forage pélagique joue un rôle vital.
This fish plays a vital role in the fishery of eastern Canada. It's a source of important food for other species, notably tuna and cod, and is a traditional source of bait in some commercial fisheries, such as that of the lobster and snow crab.
To make concerted efforts to rebuild the mackerel stock is clearly demonstrated by a decade of assessments that represent the best available science. The Department's commitment to such action is reinforced by recent amendments to the Fisheries Act that mandate a rebuilding plan for major stocks, like this, that are below their limit reference points, also referred to as the critical zone, a level below which serious harm to the sustainability of the stock occurs. Small pelagic fish, like Atlantic mackerel, are good candidates for rebuilding, however. These species grow relatively fast and mature young, and the Department is optimistic that this stock could rebuild with the continuation of strong management measures. Increasing spawning stock biomass and protecting fish until they reach more typically productive older life stages would have a positive effect on recruitment and promote rebuilding of the stock. Looking forward, we continue to work to ensure that a resumed fishery will be improved with better monitoring and managed in a way to optimize spawning potential. We have also been engaging with our colleagues in the United States to promote complementary actions that serve the best interests of harvesters in both countries, as well as the transboundary mackerel stock. These efforts, while painful at this time, are intended to restore the essential role of mackerel in the ecosystem. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that. We'll now go to Mr. Perkins for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for joining us today in this important study. In your opening statement, you mentioned that only 15% of fishers fishing mackerel derive their income from it. But most of mackerel is a bait fishery and therefore is the most important part of the $4 billion lobster fishery, is it not?
Yeah, it's a critical part of that fishery, right. No doubt.
The Integrated Fisheries Management Plan on the DFO website for Atlantic mackerel, which is from 2007 but has been periodically updated, says that the spawning temperature begins at 9 degrees Celsius for mackerel, and the maximum is between 10 and 12 degrees. Is that correct? That's what I'm reading in the report.
I'll turn to Jean-Yves Savaria to field that.
So, and Dr. Dominique Robert, who appeared before this committee, who participates in a lot of your studies, admitted in his testimony that quite often DFO has been going out when the water temperature is lower than 9 degrees quite frequently, and as high sometimes as 14 degrees, which is too hot. So when DFO is doing spawning science on mackerel, and you no longer have the catch data, which was a critical part of your science, so you've lost half the science, and the other half of the science is being done at a time when the water temperature is too cold for mackerel to spawn. Are you surprised then that it shows that the biomass, spawning biomass, is too small when you're actually sampling when the spawning biomass isn't there?
I'll refer to Jean-Yves Savaria to answer the questions related to the spawning issues and temperature. Oh, sorry, yes.
Oui, alors, merci pour la question.
Thank you for the question. We have to understand that the surveys that are conducted, as you say, when the temperatures are good, some years we might not be doing this when the temperature is optimal, and to make sure that we sample at the correct time, we also have analysis that are done on the fish and on the samples, and we analyze the gonads to look at where they are at in the reproductive cycle. When we see that we're outside of the period, the data is withdrawn from the analysis. So this is data that is collected every year. So we have temporal series. It is over a long period of time, and we can use these data for our analyses. even if sometimes we cannot because of the temperature.
Half the data is gone because you use sample catch samples and they're no longer there. The heat mapping work that we've done and looking at the Gulf of St. Lawrence where you do this shows that on average it's 8 degrees and sometimes it's cold to 6 degrees where you go. So you're telling me that when you do science in the last 10 years and those years are eliminated. So how many years of science where it is actually in the 9 to 12 degree sample size do you have in making this decision that the spawning biomass is too small?
J'ai pas l'information.
I don't have the information with me right now for the years that we've sampled, but I can tell you that almost all of the surveys that were conducted were a success.
Thank you for this. I'll start with asking both of the officials, I guess. Does DFO have stock assessments in place for the mackerel stocks that have been closed to harvest?
Yes, we will be having a stock assessment, science advice provided to the department in the first quarter of 2023.
How recent is the information used in that assessment?
Perhaps Jean-Yves could speak to the information that's coming from that. I haven't seen it just yet.
I'm running short of time on here, so I'd also ask DFO if they have stock rebuilding plans in place for the mackerel stocks that have been closed, if they could answer in writing. And I'd also ask if DFO have resources and actions, or ask if DFO resources and actions have been prioritized and increased to restore mackerel stocks closed to harvest by the moratorium. And I think I'm out of time. Well, have we got 1 minute left? Okay, if answers to any of those questions are available now.
Speak to the rebuilding plan. We do have one in place. In fact, we also do have a rebuilding plan working group with DFO officials, fisheries management, science, as well as industry, other harvesters, First Nations. And we are looking at that rebuilding plan. Unfortunately, the objectives to date haven't been met, and we haven't seen the rebuilding that we had hoped initially. So there's actually a meeting next month with this working group, with industry, to develop better objectives for that rebuilding plan.
And are there indications of why the rebuilding plan has failed?
Indications point to overfishing as the dominant factor in terms of why it hasn't rebuilt yet.
Is natural mortality a part of that as well?
I would say so, yes.
And what type of natural mortality might that be?
I think there could be some sealed aspects to this, and there could be some other from larger predators in the food web.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold. A few seconds over, but that's okay. We'll now go to Mr. Hardy for 5 minutes, 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we'll give the first question to Mr. Kellaway.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy, for that. Just one question. In the last session, MP Small mentioned that the USA increased its TAC by 1,000 tons. Can you speak to whether or not that's happened?
That was something which was just brought to my attention kind of as we came into this session this afternoon. I will have to go back and verify that information. I do know we've engaged the United States at senior levels, myself personally and other senior officials within the department as recently as last month. 2 months ago, the minister wrote to her counterpart at NOAA, again pressing the case. We would like to see a formal bilateral relationship to manage this fishery.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Over to Ken.
Thank you, Mr. Kellaway. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, along that same line, we've heard testimony this evening that it's almost a zero-sum game. If we don't catch them, the Americans will. So when you are speaking about some sort of a management arrangement from the United States, are you maybe seeking some different arrangement so that, in fact, stocks can be rebuilt without one partner poaching the other?
I think that's exactly what we'd be hoping for, sir. It is something, it's a model that we use with the United States on other stocks on the Georges Bank, groundfish stocks, as well as on the west coast with respect to some groundfish and salmon as well.
Okay, well, there'd be some questions, I suppose, about how it came to be as it is right now, but we'll leave that for the time being. It was 30 years ago, on July 2nd, that the cod moratorium was put in place, and we've had 30 years to try and rebuild those stocks. But in evidence in past hearings, we've heard that again. There's they're not seeing the large fish. There's and disagreements, of course, with the fishers about the state of the cod stock. But the fact is that the DFO isn't necessarily satisfied that here 30 years later, we still haven't brought our cod back to abundance. And now it appears we're seeing the same sort of thing with mackerel. Is that a fair assessment at this point?
Might be too early to speculate if this is a similar situation. As I noted in my opening remarks, mackerel is quite a bit different than groundfish, and we are hopeful that it can rebuild if given the time and with the proper measures in place.
Now, again, in some of the earlier testimony in these hearings, there's quite a difference between what the DFO says it observes, and we presume that there is observations, versus what the fishers say. The fishers, particularly, in the more northerly sections of the Gulf of St. Lawrence, are saying there's lots of fish there. Now, of course, fishermen are always going to go to where the fish are. So maybe they're getting a warped view of the actual state of the stocks, or maybe they're just seeing something that the DFO isn't. What do you think?
I'll start, and perhaps Jean-Yves Savaria can add. I think first and foremost, we take the input provided to us from harvesters very seriously. We do have the Atlantic Mackerel Advisory Committee process, which is a very formal process, but also throughout the year. Just recently, 2 weeks ago, I met with the FFAW, and this very issue came up, and we discussed that. There certainly is, we take that into consideration in terms of developing the recommendations to the minister. Perhaps Jean-Yves can add to that with respect to some of the science collaboration.
I don't know that Mr. Savaria is tuned in. Oh, you're on mute, sir. That much I can tell you. No.
You're still on mute.
Excusez-moi, j'avais perdu.
I'm sorry, I had lost sound, so I didn't hear the question.
Just briefly, what we heard was there's quite a difference of observation between fishers and the DFO. The fishers are telling us there's lots of fish, particularly in the more northern areas of the Gulf of St. Lawrence. The DFO doesn't observe that. So, okay, what's going on? Is it somebody's right and somebody's wrong, or what?
C'est difficile de dire.
It's difficult to say if anyone is wrong. It's possible, given the nature of this species. It's a migratory species that stays in schools. When they migrate, we can see large schools of fish, even though the situation of the population overall is that the numbers are quite low. If we look at the entire ecosystem, it is possible that fishers can see fish because they're grouped together and they migrate a lot.
It's in the same place every year, and is there an impact then on climate change and the shifting populations of these fish?
Oui, en fait, on est.
Yes, we follow with great interest what's happening with regards to climate change. And right now what we do is we do egg surveys in the southern Gulf, but also, as was already mentioned, as other witnesses have said, we take samples of different we do different modeling. So we work. We have a committee in place. We have a science committee with representatives from the industry to take into account the different information that might be noted and things that could be brought up. And we could make efforts to sample elsewhere if we believe that it's relevant to do so, to make sure that we're covering and having a good scientific data to provide.
Mr. Hardy, we'll now go to Madame Desbiens for 6 minutes or less, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, and thank you to our witnesses. It's very much appreciated that you're here. I'd like to come back on the testimony that we heard last week. Mr. Collin and Mr. Lelievre, he's a fisher who was directly impacted, and he didn't see this coming. And he didn't have anything to do anymore. His boat was prepared to go out to fish. So these fishers can't stay in this type of situation. They have to reorient themselves, or they have to review their entire lives as fishers. And so they're asking for a financial compensation. What happens if 2023, 2024, we're not able to have stock recovery and that they have to let go of this fishery? Do we have a means of supporting them? Félix Leclerc was saying, don't give money to someone. You have to teach them to fish. So these are large principles around sustainability. Do you have a solution for these people? Last week, what we heard was very overwhelming. It was very difficult to hear. Thank you for your question.
9 mackerel harvesters who are largely dependent on this fishery, and that's determined by the landings of basically 50% or more of their landings are related to that, and it's something which we take very seriously. At this year's advisory committee meeting, I made it very clear to all members and all the associations, all the participants, that we did have all options on the table, including and up to the closure of the commercial and bait fisheries. And it was something which we did reiterate, and we certainly tried to ensure that people weren't being caught off guard. I certainly, and I empathize very much with these harvesters. In the particular question of is there assistance? The short answer is my mandate as a fisheries manager is I have a number of tools to work with, the sustainable fisheries framework, the precautionary approach, the fish stock provisions. Unfortunately, nothing in my toolbox includes assistance for harvesters in the manner in which you described.
Donc, ce qu'on comprend, c'est...
So what we can understand is that they have nothing to look forward to next year. And so they were explaining that they're the only ones that had a measure of the resource. They had the obligation of providing a measure of the resource when they were fishing. And so now that those fishers are no longer providing data or measurements, you have other tools. Fishers out on the water are a precious resource. Do you have any other ways to measure the stock or the resource? Are we doing this without them?
There are a number of tools. As noted, we do collaborate with industry, and there was some sampling done last year. In other fisheries that have faced closures, we have also launched index fisheries. We have an index fishery in redfish, similar fisheries in cod. So those things are possible when you look at my toolbox as a fisheries manager. But the situation as presented last year, unfortunately the stock was in such bad shape that was the decision that we felt needed to be taken.
Est-ce que pour vous, la pêche des seigneurs...
For you, is the fishery by seiners and the traditional bait fishery, this is considered as sustainable? Could this not be distinct when you're making decisions? It would have provided you some tools with bait fishers, and it would have controlled a lot of it would have lessened the impact on the resource. Could you have made a distinction between these two types of fisheries?
There are a number of possibilities that we could have looked at. It is very difficult to manage in every single case. Certainly, we'd be looking for, as part of our ongoing consultations with industry, more ideas and suggestions and advice to take into account and provide to the minister as advice and recommendations. So I wouldn't want to rule anything out, but it was the nature of the stock at that time that led the minister to that decision for complete closure commercially and for bait.
Est-ce que pour vous, il y a d'autres grands acteurs qui...
Are there other major actors that have an impact on the resource, such as the seals? Is this an important element in your data?
We certainly have information related to seal predation for some stocks as being the determinant factor in their levels and rebuilding. For mackerel, I might turn to Jean-Yves Savaria if he has more information on the seal predation question. We do know they're an opportunistic predator.
Oui, tout à fait. Je peux confirmer que...
Yes, I can confirm that there is seal predation. With the current data, we don't believe that it's a significant portion of mortality. However, more study should be completed in order to confirm this.
For 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to the witnesses for being here. I'm trying to put together all the information that we've heard so far. Ultimately, my goal when I'm listening is to try to figure out what piece of information are most important and relevant to come forward as recommendations, based on what you're saying and others are saying for government on how to best move forward in light of the circumstances. And it cannot be denied the differences that we're hearing depending on who we're talking to on the circumstances that we're in. And I'm trying to understand how that could be in my brain. I mean, I'm not an expert in this area, so there seems to be a theme, though, on some gaps in communication and in consultation. People, it seems to be there's information that's very real in front of one person and real in front of another, but there seems to be gaps in people talking to one another. At least that's my perception. You can correct me if I'm completely wrong on that. I'm happy to hear that you'd spoken with FFAW, because this is somebody, of course, that had come as a witness prior and attended one of our meetings on this. And I'm curious to know what the what came from that meeting, because when FFAW was here, for example, I had quoted this from the FFAW magazine because I feel like it so succinctly describes what it is that they're seeing. But Dr. Aaron Carruthers, and I hope I'm pronouncing that name correctly, was talking about the harvesters' observations of mackerel abundance and distribution being so widely different based on the observations of DFO versus harvesters. And she goes on to say that long-term commitment to document the abundance, distribution, extent, timing, and age of mackerel in Newfoundland waters is needed. Until we bring more observations and data from Newfoundland to the mackerel stock assessment, I do not see how we can reconcile these widely different assessments of the health of the mackerel stock. Now, I hate to repeat in a setting when we have such limited opportunities, but I feel that it really highlights an issue. And I was wondering if you can respond to that quote and let me know your perspective on that, please.
Sure. And I actually might turn to Jean-Yves Savaria for The question with respect to what Newfoundland harvesters were seeing and the assessments which we have in place with in that case.
Mr. Severia?
Parfait, merci. Oui, ben, tout à fait. En fait,
Thank you. Yes. We have regular exchanges. We have a science committee with different representatives. The FFAW is there. It was mentioned by Mr. Williams. Everything indicates that there is a significant problem for the mackerel stocks currently in the critical zone. The egg surveys that we've been doing, we see that the levels are very low. Also, we see that there has been overfishing. The data is showing this, and it is all linked to a modification of the age structure, and this is linked to a period of very high landings. We're working with our U.S. colleagues, and they are also doing stock assessments. And our assessments correspond in terms of trends for the stocks. As I was saying earlier, we would like to continue to work with different associations, with the industry, and with their observations in order to improve our surveys and the work that we're doing to provide the best advice possible for decision-making purposes.
The group that has come up a few times, and I forget the actual name of it now, the Atlantic Mackerel, the group that you're saying that comes together, who participates on that group?
So the Atlantic Mackerel Advisory Committee, this is a committee that we have for every major stock that we manage. Everyone has their own various component by species. And this is comprised of DFO officials, of course, fisheries managers. I chair it. And we have around the table harvester associations, including some of the ones who testified here. Like the FFAW, the MFU, PEIFA, and others, First Nations, Indigenous groups, environmental, non-governmental organizations as well. And it's very much in large part anyone who has a large stake in the fishery or their members are represented at the table.
Thank you. Maybe I can just ask then, what do you see as the gaps in communication? Is there anything that you're seeing in your role? Clearly, you're in the middle of it. Are you seeing any gaps in communication? And if so, are there any recommendations for improvements in that communication that you can see?
So I think 2 points. One, I certainly tried at the Atlantic Mackerel Advisory Committee meeting in terms of the position of the department based on the science advice and based on what we felt as fisheries managers would be or could be an appropriate approach with respect to that all options were indeed on the table as a result of the science that we had before us. Interestingly, and the immediate response back from some harvester associations with respect to that recommendation, to the recommendation for a total allowable catch, in some cases was considerably higher than the previous year. And so I do question whether or not my messaging was succinct enough. However, it was. I can provide you with my speaking notes, which I read verbatim. So I'm not sure about the disconnect with respect to that particular meeting. I do think more broadly, and we do encourage informal conversations all the time, and in fact do meet frequently with the major harvester associations. So that type of communication, ongoing work with respect to science, and where we can find more ways to collaborate And we do have tools for that, whether it's a Section 10 under the Fisheries Act or some of the sampling programs that science has. We do have tools to really collaborate with industry there, and that's certainly ongoing, and that's something I think going into the next AMAC meeting in the first quarter of 2023, I really hope industry will come forward with ideas in the event that this fishery doesn't reopen. Do they have ideas with respect to further collaboration around science and that type of thing? There is that possibility that we may be in that situation again. I don't want to prejudge. We haven't seen the science assessment yet, nor have we consulted. But there is that.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Barron. That went way over. I'm going to have to get a bit tighter on my time frames, I think, to save time. We'll now go to Mr. Small for 5 minutes or less and not a second more.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ticking.
Thank you very much. My question to Mr. Williams. Everyone that's taken to the water in Newfoundland and Labrador this year has experienced catching a mackerel. They've seen them. Is it possible that DFO science has it wrong? Can you say with all certainty that these people that have observed mackerel in large quantities, historic quantities, are wrong? Yes or no?
I don't think I can answer that yes or no. I think I'm not doubting what they saw. Absolutely not. However, I think also the science that we have to make the decisions can also be correct.
So people in your capacity are paid to make very important decisions. If you have it wrong, if there's a massive bloom of mackerel, that you've missed them somehow, what will be the implications on the year classes of cod, herring, crab, lobster, all these species that lay their eggs and the larvae floats up through the water column? And we know mackerel don't have an air bladder. They have to swim, not so that they don't sink. When they're swimming, they're eating. If you have it drastically wrong, what will be the implication on the species that mackerel is foraging on?
I'll turn to my colleague, Jean-Yves Savaria, for this science question.
Évidemment, je n'ai pas de réponse à vous donner.
I cannot provide you an answer because this is not the situation that we see in the ecosystem. But I can mention that before the fishery, there was a balance that existed. That situation would probably tend to come back if we were mistaken, as you're saying. But the current science, the best available science at DFO, is corroborated as well by our American colleagues and shows very clearly that there's a major problem with mackerel right now. And I'd also like to mention what I was saying earlier.
The answer so far from this witness? In the Gulf of St. Lawrence, in the last number of years, we've seen a lot of right whales. We don't deny they're there. We see them, right? Is that correct? That's correct. So if you see a lot of mackerel, how can you say there's no mackerel?
I think it's correct in that they were seeing a lot of mackerel in those areas at that time. But we also know that this particular species is highly migratory and it schools in small areas. So it's quite possible. And no doubt they witnessed that, absolutely.
And I'm just going to go back to a previous witness here, Ms. Giffen, who admitted that her claims on year classes aren't based on any science because there haven't been any mackerel taken and you just haven't sampled them physically to know what the year classes are. So how can you have science making claims, talking about year classes and biomasses, and there's absolutely no science to back it up. The science is absolutely so weak. Anyone?
Jean-Yves?
Moi, je peux répondre très certainement.
I can answer, quite certainly. There are samples. Sampling was done since last year. So we analyze this data with the cooperation of fishers. We can have samples, and also we can look at the age classes. Work is ongoing.
But you're not doing any new science.
So what are you proposing to improve mackerel science? Can you tell the committee you must care enough to want to improve your science, and what steps are you taking to have a more fulsome science approach and to have a better assessment of the mackerel biomass?
Oui, tout à fait. En fait, c'est sûr, c'est certain.
Yes, this is of interest. There is a collaboration, as I mentioned. Since the beginning, we are cooperating with the industry to look at their observations and to validate these elements. There's also cooperation with the Americans. And we are working together. We're sharing data. The mackerel stocks in the north, they go, of course, into the southern waters. So these exchanges, there are a lot of data that's entered into our models. Because of this mix between the north and the southern stocks, there are genetic analyses also that are conducted to see what impact the U.S. fishery could have during the winter, where the northern stock is migrating towards the south. So we're looking at that right now, and all this cooperation that was already implemented during the last year with fishers will continue. And we will continue to sample in order to pursue our scientific work. So the base work, further surveys, and all this historic series of data that we have, all of this will continue. And we are working with the Americans, with the industry for research purposes, and we could fund on an ad hoc basis and on an as-need basis to obtain the results of this work in order to increase our analyses and to provide advice to the stock resource management.
Barron has a point of order, I believe. And Mr. Small, I know you wanted to ask another question, but you were about a minute and a half over at least, and we just don't have the time, unfortunately. Ms. Barron.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to, through you, ask that we please maintain respectful dialogue around the table, in particular when we are corresponding with our witnesses. I'm noticing a pattern of accusatory language being used when we are speaking with our witnesses, and I would like our witnesses to continue to come back to this committee. And so I would like to please ask through you, Chair, that we have all MPs speaking respectfully to witnesses regardless of who is present and their affiliation or background. Thank you.
Thank you for raising that, Ms. Barron. I'll comment on it after our witnesses are gone, perhaps, but or at the next meeting. I want to say thank you to the departmental officials for sharing their time with us today and providing insight into this particular study that the committee has now undertaken. They have always been cooperative to come, regardless of which division they're from. There's never any problem to get the officials from the department to come before this committee. And again, we say thank you for that. So, next meeting, of course, on Friday, we will hold our first meeting on the impacts of climate crisis study and hear from witnesses on this topic. We will also take time to discuss drafting instructions for the letter to the Minister for the mackerel study. So, and as well, I know Mr. Fergus joined us today in place of Mr. Cormier. Thank you, Mr. Ferguson, for doing that. And we'll hopefully see you back again sometime, maybe in the room next time, and be able to give you an official welcome. So again, to everybody, hearing no disagreement, meeting adjourned.